E36 BMW. So Gary Dunn as the lead car, Richard Grindrod chasing him down in the V8 powered. As you can see, that puddle there, absolutely huge. Struggling through these conditions, these guys using every bit of talent that they've got behind the wheel of these vehicles to get those cars on the clipping points, giving the judges some driving to be able to separate these two, but good.
As we go to Wesley Keating in the Namcan Tyre Drift Team, leading Paul Cheshire in the G35 Falcon sponsored machine. Down, and Paul running exceptionally wide there round that corner as Wesley Keating keeps it tight on to the judging line as Paul Smith.
Next battle, we see Mark Looney from Team Sats in the 1000 brake horsepower Supra against Paul Smith from Team Jackspeed in the 1JZ powered Nissan S15. So into the first corner they go. Mark Looney just putting it wider into that first corner, but nice smooth transition from both drivers as Paul Smith is reading in that Supra into the second corner, and he is going for the overtake, but he backs off a little bit just to allow Mark Looney to tuck in, but ever so close. It's going to come through to the second battle. Yeah, that's right, Corey, and obviously it's the Super Pros now with James Fuller versus Dan Moorhead. So into the first corner, James Fuller with loads of angle there, very early initiation, with more speed and angle from Dan Moorhead there as they come down the hill now. Again, more snappy and more aggressive than Dan Moorhead. James Fuller.
Jay Green with a great initiation and Jay White hunting him down. As you can see, close proximity driving there from Jay White. Jay Green's going to try and pull a lead now down the hill in the green S13. As you can see, using the power to try and pull away from Jay White and into that final corner. That progressed into the third, fourth place battle against Jay White. Jay White in the Team M&M S14A. In the rear there, chasing Gaz through that first corner. Fantastic proximity. He's almost on the door, ladies and gentlemen, into that second section. A mistake from Gaz, forcing him to straighten and back off, possibly missing the gear change, means that Jay White backed off to allow a little bit of room and avoid a collision, but he's straight back on Gaz as he goes round into that. Our next semi-final sees William Rose in the small BMW compact chasing Dan Hall, who was top qualifier. Daniel Hall in the R32 putting in a good run and making a big correction though. William Rose is going to use that to his advantage, just backing off a little bit. Daniel has been suffering from engine problems throughout the day and is trying everything he can to wring the neck of the R32 at this final round. Cheshire in the Falcon G35 chasing the little Volvo of Dan Vermeer into that first corner, and you can see Paul Cheshire rubbing Dan there as he goes round that first bend into that hairpin. This is the close proximity that we always like to see in the British Drift Championship, but Dan's using the power in that V8 Volvo to try and pull away, believe it or not, from the 700 horsepower Falcon G35 against Dan Vermeer in the Volvo. And you can see a small collision there, and there's a dint in Dan's door. That was quite a hard collision from those guys, certainly putting Martin off his line, and it looks like it may have caused a problem to Martin's car as he doesn't seem to be continuing the drift. Dan is just going to pass him as he moves into the final corner, maintaining his drift. We'll have to wait and see the judges' take on that run. Going up against Shane O'Sullivan, current leader, and Phil Morrison looks like he's going into the wall. And no, Shane O'Sullivan goes into the wall, having to back out there. It really did look like Phil was going to make an impact with the wall. The problem is you back out with these cars mid-drift.
David Waterworth following Matt Carter in the Falcon R32 as they go over Seat Curve. You can see the clipping point there on the inside of the corner. David Waterworth using that car beautifully behind Matt Carter there, nice and close, and he is very, very close. One of the closest battles we've seen during these finals.
Just wanted to see, very close going into battle number 2 now, past the drag cone. Simon Perry is the lead car, Darren McNamara is the chase car. Nice initiation there from Simon Perry as Darren McNamara runs a wider angle again than Simon Perry, giving Simon Perry a little bit of an advantage there with the judges, but you can see nice line there transitioning around. Simon Perry is sticking to the line as Darren McNamara puts one wheel over the line, giving him that all-important number 3 on that podium. So that leaves one battle left, the Super Pro final. James Fuller, just a pro driver against Remo Neeson. So here we go into the first corner. Nice speed and angle there from both drivers as they make their way down the hill into the second corner. That's where they get the compression, that's where it makes it difficult for these drivers. But both of them looking very consistent. Remember, James Fuller is just a pro driver, and after finishing in the top 4 at the last round, he's eligible to compete.
In the black 32, fantastic initiation from both drivers. Phil trying to close the gap as Simon did in the first run, but Simon pulling a slight lead into that hairpin. Huge correction from Phil Morrison as he misses the gear, but Simon Perry's going to keep it pinned right round that final corner. Gioni. So Bagsley the lead car and Lappage in the chase car. These are teammates, so complete trust with one another. Just look at how close Mark Lappage is getting to Bagsley through that middle section. These guys are not afraid of giving each other a slight nudge, but overall Mark mirroring the drift of Stephen there and putting in a fantastic. So our top 8 battle goes Paul Smith versus Matt Carter. Matt Carter flicks in with huge angle in the Falcon R32. Paul Smith chasing him well, but then completely offline now into this final section. Matt Carter is going to gain an advantage for that, but Paul keeping that close proximity in the hope of not losing too many points. But a little mistake at the end there. Kirk from America, our Formula D guest driver here at the British Drift Championship. Ryan, not used to the right-hand drive vehicles here in the UK, misses a gear as he comes down the hill, giving a lead to Wesley Keating. Wesley Keating is going to make sure he uses that to his advantage as he pulls a great big gap through that final corner and across the finish line. Nicely into that first corner, so Shane initiates with a good, and Matt Carter has lost his drift, throwing that advantage away from the first corner. This is allowing Shane O'Sullivan to pull a huge lead on this battle, switching things around. I've no doubts that Shane will gain the advantage from the judges and go through into the semi-final. For Major, Dan in the Volvo likes to get up nice and close to his competitors, and Gary leading. Dan is going to try and use the V8 power that he's got in the Volvo. I'm sure he'll be using the nitrous oxide in that car to try and use that as an advantage, and Gary Dunn is driving very wide there on that first corner. He may give that opportunity to Dan in order to gain an advantage on this first run as they go around that final corner. Nice on that clipping point and across the finish.
Stephen Biaggioni, and they enter that first corner with Steve in the lead on this first run, hitting the clipping points perfectly. But then again, so is Martin Batty in the R35 powered S15. Stephen there working like mad on that handbrake, trying to keep that car on the perfect line which the judges have asked for. Just
wide there, but sticking with Paul Smith around that first corner. Paul Smith putting the power down of those Maxxis tyres again. Oh, and then Mark Looney making an error there, coming into the second corner during his initiation. The judges will mark him down for that. Paul Smith puts the power down all over Paul Smith, but due to that error coming into the second corner, gives Paul Smith the advantage into the semi-finals. Number 2 now, so a huge advantage for Remo into this one now. They're going to switch around. Remo is the lead car. Matt Carter seems to be all over Remo in that first battle, in that first corner though, as they make their way around the last corner. Matt Carter making a slight error again then, giving massive points to Remo Neeson and puts him in the final against James Fuller.
Super Pro class for 2013, David Waterworth in the V10 S15 as the lead car, followed by Christian Lewis, who nudges that apex and causes a spin on that first run. So David Waterworth keeping his cool and keeping it pinned round that final corner. And Matt with a fantastic entry there. Bagsy's going to try and catch up with him now, and he is on the door of that car as they go into that second corner. A small nudge from Bagsy on the rear wheel of Mark Lappage, causing him to just straighten back off, give it a clutch kick to get the drift going again, allowing Mark to take a little bit of an advantage through that middle section as they go round into that final corner. Will Mark progress straight now into our second battle? Richard Grindrod will have a healthy advantage, and Richard Grindrod's almost in the door there of William Rose. William Rose not phased though, keeping his foot pinned as he transitions into this long section before this final corner, and Richard Grindrod's still there. William Rose is going to be doing everything he can, but what a run from Richard as they cross the car, as he piles into that first corner with a great initiation, but Matt is not going to be giving it lightly. He's chasing him down nice and tight into that hairpin corner, but Nathan's going to use that supercharged V8 to his advantage to try and pull a lead. The question is, will it be a greater advantage than the 38 powered S15 as they flick it into that first corner? Slight use of the handbrake there by Dan, which the judges will penalise him for, but Martin Batty absolutely on the qualifying line. Very few errors from both these drivers as they make it round that final corner. It could be either driver taking the win. From It's a Drift Life. So the R32 Skyline of Matt Carter leads this first run, and Christian Lewis is going to chase him down now in the It's a Drift Life R33. Christian showing good close proximity, a little bit dab of the handbrake, but you can just see the improvement in the driving with these guys. The conditions are drying, and that is a fantastic chase run from Christian Lewis there on Matt Carter. Wow.